Hello, I'm Kim Rix, and you are listening to How a Rookie Mistake Inspired a New Purpose. Well, I have a younger sister, and her name is Kate. And something that not many people know about me is that I'm adopted. In fact, we're both adopted. And at the time, my adopted father was in the business of marketing. And he was actually doing some work for the Independent Adoption Society. So when I was around 7 years old, my sister and I received an invitation from the Adoption Society to represent them at the opening night of the screening of Jaws. Now, surely you've heard of Jaws, the big great white. So this was going to be held at the famous Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square. Today you see A-listers walking up the red carpet for their premiere screenings at the Odeon. Well, I didn't get to walk on the red carpet, but I was there, and as you can see, my sister in the forefront there is shaking hands with Sir Angus Ogilvy, and in the background, we're both there, but you can see that Princess Alexandra is holding a bouquet of flowers, which I gave her. Now, and I know that the picture's in black and white, but actually, I'll never forget my mother, watching my mother at her sewing machine. In fact, my dress is brown and my sister's dress is blue, but they were very, very pretty. But anyway, it was a long time ago. And when I was meeting the princess, I do remember having this feeling of disappointment. I mean, there I was, in front of a real life princess, but something didn't feel right. And so I asked her, "Where's your crown?" So, well, I don't remember her reply, but I just thought that every princess wears a crown. So there you go. So from a very, very early age, I knew that I liked gemstones. I knew that my birthstone was amethyst because my birthday is in February. And I would actually ask my grandparents, who were very, very keen travelers, always to bring me back a souvenir from their world travels. So I think I got a amethyst pendant from Madagascar and a moonstone ring, a pretty little moonstone ring from Sri Lanka. And I actually bought myself an amethyst and diamond ring for my 18th birthday. So, I liked jewelry. And then when I was about 20, my parents got divorced, and my mother actually went to Colombia for a teaching job. She taught sciences. And this was actually back in 1990, and I'd just spent a year in the USA. So I flew over to Cali in Colombia, and I ended up staying with my mother for 3 months. And at the time, I mean, I worked at the local school, the bilingual school. So I assisted with the teaching, and I managed to actually get a little bit of money together, enough really to either go traveling for 3 months, or, well, I had met this young lady who's actually a jeweler, and so the option was, go traveling for 3 months or ask her to make me a little emerald ring. Anyway, it was a bit of a dilemma, but well, it wasn't too much of a dilemma because jewelry obviously won. And she actually took me to see these trader guys, and I selected a little emerald, and she actually set it. In fact, here I am wearing it today. So there you go. So that's my little Colombian emerald, a memento of that time that I spent in Colombia shortly after my parents got divorced, and I had some good teaching experiences out there. Anyway, so after that, it's just every holiday that I used to go on, I used to use the opportunity to go and seek out the local gem trade in that country. And over time, I think it became, well, the whole gemstone thing for me became a little bit of an addiction. And I started sort of trying to self-learn, self-educate myself through watching various TV channels as you can see, I used to watch Gemporia, Rox and Co, the Jewellery Channel, TJC, and I found Don Kogan and watched his Game of Stones. So yeah, so it really did become a bit of an addiction. Now, the rookie mistake, you might be wondering. Well, 6 years ago, my husband and I actually went to Egypt for a holiday, and we went to Sharm el-Sheikh. Well, big tourist area, and we stayed in a 4-star hotel, which 4-star, pretty good quality. And I made the assumption that the boutique shop attached to the hotel would be the same and would be trustworthy. I fell in love with a red stone, and at the time I didn't know anything really about asking for certificates or asking any of the important questions like warranty, or I just didn't know any of that. And I certainly didn't know the value of an 8-carat Burmese ruby. Well, now I do. I mean, that's probably a few million. But so I was, at that time, I was that naive tourist who just believed what she was told. Anyway, here it is, just to show you. This is my so-called Burmese ruby, but in fact, it's glass, or so I have been told by my local jeweler when I got home. Well, you know, as I say, I was that naive tourist, and in hindsight, I mean, I didn't know that in fact there is evidence of jewelry making all the way back, it dates back all the way to 4000 BC. I mean, they were master craftsmen. They are master craftsmen at creating simulants, so lookalikes of precious gemstones. So your rubies, your emeralds, your diamonds. Anyway, but they're master craftsmen of making them in glass, and I didn't know that. So with that mistake under my belt, and feeling a little bit silly, well, I had been duped, I decided to go and sign up with the GIA and actually get myself some proper knowledge. So here I am, holding my GIA certificate after 7 months in the classroom. Something else you probably don't know about me is that my first name really is Anna, and Kermeen was a name also given to me. But somehow along the way, as a child, I became known as Kim. So there you go. So I qualified after 7 months in the classroom as a graduate gemologist for the GIA. Now, I just want to point out one thing, something that's actually quite important, is that being a gemologist, studying gemology, it's actually about the identification of gemstones. It's not about being a valuer. It's not being able to actually, look at a gemstone and say, actually, it's worth X amount. That's not what being a gemologist is about. Now, but you see, I want to point this out because I receive emails all the time and messages from Instagram saying, they send me little photos and say, can you tell me what this is? And sometimes it's, can you tell me how much it would be worth? Well, and most of the time it's pictures of rocks or minerals that they send me, well, which are different again to gemstones. But I mean, basically the answer is no. Frankly, it's, even if it was a gemstone, it's just that identifying gemstones takes a number of tests that you have to do, generally speaking, in a laboratory. So so it's actually very difficult to identify a gemstone or any kind of stone just from looking at it. I mean, I may have an idea, to give you an idea of what it is, but I couldn't actually 100% say with certainty what it is. But there are telltale signs, that you can look for. And throughout my research, I have actually discovered you know, the what to look for, and it's that those kind of information that I share, you know, in my books. So what happened after that? It was like, well, what do I do with this newfound knowledge? What am I going to do with it? And at one point, I actually attended a seminar, and there was an hour session about creating ebooks, and the chap on stage sort of told us about how he created a series of ebooks about how to buy property. And he actually said that he had just taken all the knowledge. He'd basically spent 82 hours on the internet, and then, you know, taking the information found on the internet, downloading it, and then rewriting it and putting it into an ebook. So, and I thought, wow, you know, now there's an idea. And he had actually replicated the book for each country around Europe. So it's basically the same, but slightly different bits of information for each country, but the format, the template was the same. So now the bit about sitting at a desk for 82 hours really didn't appeal to me. And the idea of, you know, looking on the internet for the information, it didn't really sit well with me. I mean, it didn't feel terribly authentic, and, you know, I just thought that's not really me. So really made me think about what skills I could bring to the table, that actually I could share. What skills and knowledge could I share with other people? And that made me think, well, I'm a professional photographer by trade. You know, I'm now a gemologist by trade, and I would love to travel and see more of the world before I'm 50. So I just thought, and then it actually made me think about my experience of buying the ruby. Well, at which point, like I say, I was that naive tourist who really didn't know an awful lot, and I made that judgment and made that error, which was actually quite an expensive mistake. So I came up with the idea about writing the travel guide series about how to buy gemstones, and, you know, for beginners, because, like I say, I was that beginner, and I thought, what a great excuse to do some more traveling. I can just do everything that I love. I can do my gemology, you know, I can be around gemstones, I could do my photography, and wow, what a dream job I've just created myself. So anyway, so it was like, before that day was over, I knew exactly what I actually wanted to do. So it was, well, how do I explain that, and how did I actually then come up with Gemstone Detective as a name? Well, let me show you. Well, when you think about a detective, you think of, you know, Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, all right, and you think about what they're doing as a detective, and then I kind of came up with the, you know, the idea that, well, although they're dealing with crime, but they're seeking out the truth. You know, they're sorting and finding out, and they're investigating, and all those lovely words to do with a detective. So I thought, well, how can I, you know, and that's really what I'm going to be doing when I'm actually going to go out there, you know, to write this book series. I'm going to go and get all the information, you know, to discover, well, who do you trust? You know, what do you look for? What are the red flags that when you should walk away? And, you know, where do you look? So, you know, so that was really how I then came up with the Gemstone Detective. So it's really about putting myself in the shoes of a tourist, you know, looking for the telltale signs, looking for the clues. And at the end of the day, really, I just want to help people avoid making the same mistake that I did, buying a fake gemstone. So what would this series look like? Here we go. Here's a map of the world. And I've identified some of the countries where gemstones come from. But it's also about which are the tourist destinations. It's not so much about the countries where the gemstones originate. It's actually, where do tourists congregate? Where are the gemstones and the jewelry being sold? Anyway, but I have come up with this list, and so far, so this was my plan in 2018, really to 2023, and I think there's maybe 10 or 12 books listed there. Well, there's a flaw in the plan that actually I didn't really account for the pandemic, so I have now lost a year or a year and a half of travel. I mean, we're probably not going to be able to travel for a little while from now. So really, I think 2020, 21, I've lost 2 years, you know, so, but never mind. There are still already 8 books, 6 of which have been published. Here they are. Just wanted to show you. So, so how did I do it? So I've already been to Sri Lanka 3 times. You know, for that book, I've already been. I went to Thailand at least 3 times. I went to Australia a couple of times, India, the USA. Anyway, there is a 7th book, which is Myanmar, which is actually ready for publication right now, but because of the pandemic, I haven't published that just yet. And I'm also working on the Great Book for Great Britain right now, which is almost finished. And just to mention, there's also just a general book, which I will talk to you about in a moment. So really, the books follow, just to let you know very, very quickly, the books do follow a little bit of a pattern in that I focus on the most well-known gemstone from each country, but I do include the other gemstones that you can find in each country. And then the first half of the book really is about the beginner's gemology. So that's the learning. And then the second half of the book really does focus, that's the travel guide, where I list all the different places that you can go, you know, and to buy gemstones, including, for instance, the gem markets, the museums, and just various different other places that you can actually go and have a look at gemstones. So really, that's how the books flow. So let's have a look then. Right, have you got your passport handy? Let's go to Sri Lanka. So with Sri Lanka, as I've just mentioned, I focus on their most precious gemstone, which is the sapphire. And here you can see, you know, the map, you know, and I've marked out where the gem markets are. And there's a couple of special sections in this particular book. One is about how not to dress like a tourist, and the other one is, in fact, how to negotiate at a gemstone market. Right, so that's the Sri Lanka book, and yes, I did actually go down that mine, but that's not a place for tourists. That was just my personal, professional curiosity and experience. So moving on, now we're in Thailand. No, we're not. Sorry, we're still in Sri Lanka. We're still at the market. Here you go. As you can see, it's really, really busy. And this is where you do need to be very careful about where you stand, who's around you, only taking one gemstone at a time. And I've, you know, given you lots of tips about how to behave at the gemstone market in the book. Right, so moving on, now we're in Thailand. So here we go. This is this book. And really, for this one, I have also focused on the sapphires. But the biggest point that I wanted to make for this book is that when you're traveling in Thailand, there are a number of tricks that are played by scammers. In particular, there are in fact 3 well-known gem scams in Thailand that I want you to be aware of, that I want readers to be aware of. And the most common one is called the Grand Palace is closed today. And this is where, you know, somebody will tell you that the Grand Palace is closed, but that's fake news, because in fact he will then suggest where, you know, some other lovely places that he can take you, and he will basically introduce you to a very, very friendly tuk-tuk driver, and between them, you know, they'll plan out your day for you and take you to some lovely places, and and you'll probably part with some money. But at the end of the day, what you don't realize is that the person who originally introduced you to the tuk-tuk driver and the person at the shop and the sales assistant, well, they're all in cahoots and they all get a nice piece of the pie. So there you go. So that's just one of the scams. I mean, there is, just to say that there is, I mean, there's a couple of other scams. I've called it the government fuel scheme, and the other one is called the wholesale scam. But which is sort of like where you might be told that there are some sales on and some price drops that are only valid for 48 hours, and and really you shouldn't be pressurized by any of this. But I just want to say that in Thailand there is in fact a legitimate grand sale. So but this actually happens in June to August, and when it's legitimate, you'll actually see a little flag with a red handbag on it. So that is legitimate. But I just want people to know. I just want gem enthusiasts to know what they're, what are some of the tricks that can be played on them. So there you go. So that's the Thailand book. Now, moving on, let's go to the other side of the world. Well, the other side of the world from where I am, but let's go to Australia. And this, I have to say, was just one of my best trips ever. This is a juicy crib, which in the back, there's a bed. And believe it or not, there's also a sink and a refrigerator. But unfortunately, there isn't a toilet. But I wanted to basically show you this book because, as you can see from the front cover, I have actually focused on opals and sapphire. Opals because, as you can see from this map, I actually followed this route, which took me, in fact, 4,444 kilometers around the outback. And my husband says to me, why didn't you just drive around the corner to get that 5th kilometer? But hey, so I started off in Brisbane, and as you can see, I actually drove from Brisbane to Gemfields, which is the area that is famous for its sapphires. And then I went on to Winton, and then round via Yower, up to Lightning Ridge, and then over to the Gold Coast. So I think I took in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different shows. And I just feel that for this book, there are in fact about 20 different types of opal. And in the book, I have taken a photo, and I have told you about those different types of opal to be aware of. So, excuse me. So that's really Australia. And as I say, I really did have a phenomenal 6 weeks traveling around Australia to write that book. So my next trip was in fact in India. And India, as you can see on the front cover, there's a beautiful picture of a trapeze ruby, which I did come across a supplier, a trader in Jaipur, who has an abundance of trapeze rubies, but in fact they're not that common. But what struck me here really is when I was actually in Hyderabad, I actually went to this place, as you can see, called the Charminar. And there were quite a lot of people around here. And it's not this chap. This actual chap was quite a nice. He was a very friendly chap. And so was another chap selling pearls that I came across. Except he, in fact, was trying to tell me that he was trying to demonstrate that his pearls must be absolutely genuine, because he was actually holding a cigarette lighter to the pearls, saying, look, they don't burn, they don't burn. And really, I later actually found out that, well, first and foremost, I think I was just so shocked. I was so taken back by this that I completely forgot to take a photo. So if any of you out there do see this guy trying demonstrating burning the pearls, then please do take a photo and send it to me, because I'd love to put it in the next edition of the book. But anyway, later on, I did find out that what they do is that there is a very special chemical spray, and they spray the pearls, and then of course the chemicals protect the pearls from burning. But in fact, in all likelihood, those pearls that they are selling are made from plastic. Okay. So, but the other place that I actually went to of great interest and really surprised me was the area where Golconda diamonds were mined, and many years ago. There's no mining now, but I was really surprised when I actually went to Golconda. So I went to the fort. The mines, in fact, are apparently about 20 to 30 miles away from the actual fort, so they're nowhere near Golconda. But I was just really surprised that even in Golconda, there was just not a jewelry shop in sight, and definitely no diamonds in sight. So it was, yeah, a bit disappointing, but it was nice to see the fort. So it's, it wasn't a wasted trip by any means. So that was India, really. Yeah, let's move on to our next destination, but I just do need to take a glass of water. So, are you ready? We're off to the USA. We are off to the USA, I think. Hold on, let me just double check. Yes, we are. So with this book, there's a very strong focus on turquoise, as the cover shows. But I also, I took 3 trips for the USA book, and I drove, one of the biggest trips was actually when I flew into Las Vegas, and I drove down to Tucson, because I went to the Tucson show and experienced that for the first time. So in this little book, there's a little bit of a survivor's guide to Tucson, which you may find interesting. But I actually took, that whole trip was about 6 weeks, and I actually drove, as I say, I drove from Las Vegas to Tucson, and then I actually followed the Route 66, but I went down via Bisbee and all the way across to Deming, and right the way through New Mexico. So I went up to Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and then I came back across to Flagstaff, and then made my way back to Las Vegas for my flight home. But that entire trip was a good 6 weeks, and phenomenal. And the picture that I'm showing you here, in fact, is Smithsonite. And I was actually, I met a delightful couple up in Magdalena, and Magdalena, I mean, it's way in the back of beyond, but this is in fact where the Kelly mine is, and you can actually go to the Kelly mine and visit, and you can go and sort of dig around yourself if you want. But anyway, I'm just showing you that this is actually, on the left, you can see what you can see the botryoidal appearance, the grape appearance of what the raw smithsonite looks like as it comes out of the ground. And then on the right, you can see this little, well, in fact, it's 35 carats piece of smithsonite that I was given by this lovely couple when I was up in Magdalena. So, and in fact, the smithsonite, interestingly, smithsonite was actually discovered by James Smithson, who then the Smithsonian Institute is named after James Smithson. So he is also a geologist who found smithsonite. Right, let's move on. Right, so the next book. Now this book actually is It's not actually been published. It is ready to be published. But the reason I wanted to point this out is that I actually, on my first trip to Myanmar, I was very fortunate and managed to get a meeting with the board of the Myanmar Gems and Jewellery Entrepreneurs Association. And I was very, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate in that Dr. Angkor Win, there in the middle, standing next to, he has in fact endorsed the book and written the foreword. So I'm very, very honored to have Dr. Kaur or Win writing, you know, as the having written the foreword for that book. So that's very, very exciting, and I am looking forward to getting that one published as soon as we can. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long, but you know, anyway, hopefully, fingers crossed. Right, so I wanted to just mention as well that this is the worldwide book. Now, this is the one that's it's not a travel guide. It's actually just more of a general guide. So it's the one actually that, you know, you could be reading and enjoying right now whilst we can't travel. So, and you could be planning where you are going to travel. But in this particular book, I have actually focused on the ethics of buying gemstones, because I know that this is a really hot topic at the moment. So I've included, you know, how to buy an ethical diamond, talked about conflict diamonds, pearl farming, coral jewelry, and really, as I say, there's another section on the world famous jewelry collections, as well as getting a piercing on holiday, and even popping the question on holiday. So there you go. Right. And here we are. So what have I been doing during the last year whilst we've been in lockdown? Well, I have been busy working on this book. And again, it's nearly ready to be published. It's just in the proofreading process. And hopefully next week it'll actually be going to my typesetter. But on this trip, this is something that I've managed to do in between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. And I haven't actually managed to go anywhere yet since lockdown 3, because here we are in national lockdown. So, but I did manage to get, I have managed to get all the way up to Scotland. I've been over to Wales to talk to some experts about Welsh gold. I've been over to the other side of England, on the Norfolk coast, where I went to the Amber Museum. I've been up to Whitby to talk to Sarah Caldwell Steele about jet. And there's a few other places that I have been. Let's have a look. So there we go. This is me holding a very, very, very large piece of amber. And the other image is, in fact, Sarah is showing me 2 bracelets. One is made out of black amber, and the other one is made out of jet. And there you go. Now, can you tell which one's which? No, probably. Well, I know I couldn't. But just to say, the one on the left, I think I'm just about to get this right. The one on the left, I think, is the black amber, and the one on the right is jet. So I hope I've got that right. I'm not 100% sure. But there you go. All will be revealed in the book. So yeah, Sarah and I talked about, you know, at great length about the different imitation jets there are, and you know, what are the common finds when people go beach combing. So so yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. And then I went over to Southwold, and again, this is me holding what is probably the largest piece of amber found in the UK, on that east coast. And also, you know, I had a chat about sort of what are the types of fake amber, and as you can see, one over here with the little lizard in, that is not genuine. So there's lots of good info there. It's very, very interesting looking at all the different ambers there are available on the market. So, and then I actually got over to Wales and spoke to the guys at the Welsh Gold Centre, and then there I am actually holding a nice handful of Welsh gold. So there you go. That's pretty expensive. That's a pretty expensive lot of gold there, I can tell you. They kept a close eye on me when I was holding that. So let me just so yeah, and as well, the other thing is that you'll find is that I had Gwen, who actually works at the Welsh Gold Centre. He's actually a graduate gemologist, and he's been working with gold for very many years. And we had a really good discussion about the different hallmarks and how to show, you know, how to show provenance. At the end of the day, I mean, first and foremost, provenance is the number one factor for value in Welsh gold. So there you go. Right, where did I go to next? Oh, here we go. Yes. Now, this is interesting. I want to point out there's a place in Scotland called Ely Bay. Now, it was actually known as Ruby Bay, and I don't know whether this was just a very, very clever piece of marketing, but anyway. But I wanted to double check that this wasn't a myth. So I did. I went along to Ely Bay, and I got on my hands and knees, and I spent about 4 hours digging around, and lo and behold, I found what is in fact garnet. It's not ruby, it is garnet. And so, yes, I proved that there is garnet on the beach that you can find if you want. My point being here is that with the books, I like to make sure that anything that goes in the books is absolutely true. So like I say, I wasn't sure whether it was a myth or whether it was, you know, or whether it was just a marketing gimmick, but I had to go and prove for myself that you could in fact find garnets on the beach before I put it in the book. So there you go. Now, this really blew me away. I can't tell you how beautiful this is. I mean, it was like being in the Caribbean, you know, but I'd heard about how beautiful the beaches were up in Scotland. I mean, and I know that they've won awards. But anyway, and I'd heard about the sapphires. You know, in fact, sapphires can actually be found in different areas in Scotland, but one of those famous places for sapphires really is called Luscantire. This particular beach that is just around the corner, and called Horgabost. And I'm telling you, it was just so beautiful. Like, look at it. You literally could just be in the Caribbean. So anyway, as a good detective does, I went to investigate, and I can tell you that the only thing that I found were some very, very, very pretty shells. So there you go. So there you go. So that is really the book for Great Britain. But there's a lot more to it, as you'll discover. And I'm actually hoping to get it published to coincide with British Tourism Week, which is in mid-April 2021. So that's only about 6 weeks away. So there you go. I need to crack on with it. So let me now tell you a little bit about the gemstone tours that I have started. We had our first gemstone tour last February, just before the lockdown. And this is really an opportunity for gemstone beginners, learners, to experience the gem trade and to have a go themselves. So it's a different kind of learning experience. And as I say, last year, just before lockdown in February, we managed to go out to Mogok in Myanmar. And this is the very, very famous spot, the best spot for that overlooks the whole of, well, not the whole of Mogok, but that area of Mogok. You can see some of the older mines, the remains of some of the old mines behind there. And again, I know that everybody likes to have a photo taken with the sign, "Welcome to Rubyland." And I use these, I use these gemstone tours as a learning experience. So, you know, I can show people how to use a loop properly, how to negotiate at the market, and how basically, I mean, I can hold your hand throughout, so that throughout the process, if it helps. So, and then the other thing when we go is that, you know, I introduced my guests on the tour to a local family who are gemstone traders. Now, in Mogok, there aren't any actual shops. It's not like, you know, it's not like here where you have a jeweler's and you can just walk into the shop. It's not like that. You actually have to make an appointment. You have to have a private consultation with that family. So, so there you go. So we went and had a look, and they were very, very hospitable and showed us a lot of all their gemstones and their jewelry and all the goodies. So that was a very interesting experience for my guests. And then we went to the goldsmith in Mogok, and this is where this particular goldsmith, he employs about 20 jewelers. And the interesting thing is, in fact, that the goldsmith, he actually doesn't make much money at all through, I mean, what his jewelers are paid, they receive 90% of that, and he receives maybe 5 or 10% of the purchase price, that the piece of jewelry that's being bought. But very cleverly, he does make some money, because he actually showed me that he sweeps the floor, and he actually takes all the gold dust. He collects the gold dust, and obviously can, you know, sell that or reuse that. So he does. He's looked after, but he's very, very, I thought, very, very, very fair trading with his jewelers, his staff. So. And then, of course, I also took my guests on the gemstone tour to see the mining operations, the various lots and lots of different mines out there. This particular one is one of the ruby mines, and it's a small scale miners. It's not for the faint-hearted. There's, as you can see, there's very, very little shade. There's no toilets that I'm aware of. Very, very hot temperatures. It was something like 40 degrees on this day. So really, you know, you can watch. I've actually put some videos about them, you know, washing the gravels. You can actually have a go at washing the gravels yourself when you go to the mine. But I have in fact put some videos on my YouTube channel, Gemstone Detective on YouTube, if you want to have a look at some more of the mining operation taking place. So, and I also take my clients to watch the gemstone paintings being made. In fact, there is an opportunity to have a go yourself at making gemstones paintings on the tour. So if that takes your fancy, but it's very, very fascinating, and it's highly skilled, and they are absolutely beautiful. In fact, this particular one that you're looking at, I brought that home with me, and I have it framed in my living room. So again, they make beautiful souvenirs, beautiful mementos of your trip, and these are real gemstones that they use. And then lastly, well, the hospitality in Mogok is second to none. And here we are with our host enjoying a buffet. And believe you me when I say there was about 20 different dishes that came out for us to try. So they were exceedingly generous, and it was exceedingly delicious. So so you will get a chance to experience sort of different culinary. You'll get the chance to have different culinary experiences when you go to Mogok. So there you go. So really, I just want to say thank you very, very much for listening. This is, as I say, that's where I have now got with the book series, and really hoping that as soon as lockdown and the world starts to open again, there will be many more books to come. Thank you very, very much for listening.